Hello, this is Kathy Go, and I'm here to talk to you about APA style. So you may wonder why APA is an important part of nursing school. Well, it's because one of the key features of your nursing practice, as you've heard earlier today, is the pursuit of evidence-based practice. So that the benefits of using research to support your practice includes because it promotes safe, effective care. It is based on current reliable evidence, describes a problem-solving approach to clinical decision-making. And the main reason for conducting research is to find best practices. Nursing research is a growing body of literature. Nurses conduct research to seek best practices and establish evidence-based practice. Scholarly work by nurses must adhere to professional scholarly standards, and well-written research effectively reaches readers. Hence, we use APA format, American Psychiatric Association, or excuse me, American Psychological Association style. Why APA in nursing school, you wonder? APA style creates a way for precise and accurate information, sets writing standards, enhances quality and clarity, allows consistency in writing, and protects against plagiarism. So one of the key pieces of writing scholarly work is evaluating your sources, and you will be undertaking a project which is about this very thing. And so these are some criteria that you can use to determine whether the source you're looking at is accurate and if it comes from a authority or source that's credible. So here you can check this out on your own. It just gives you some ideas about that. This book, the 7th edition, is key to your writing success in this program. So when writing your paper, you need to be able to correctly format your title page. So there's key elements. There's the header, which is the very tip top of the page, paper title, author, course name, paper due date. So this is what it looks like. This is a title. That's what that looks like. So this is an example of a title page, which has all the elements. So then, moving along, the running head occurs on every page. It will say running head only on the title page. And the running head is composed of an abbreviated form of the title, and it should be no more than 50 characters, including spaces, and it should be all caps. So you want the running head on the left margin and the page numbers on the right. And if you look at the templates in Word, it will help you with this formatting. So that's what it looks like. This is how the paper should be constructed. You should have the title page, a separate page. The text begins on page 2, and then finally the references start on a separate page after the text. So in general, these are just some grammatical points, space after a comma, semicolon, and colon, 2 spaces after a sentence period. This is a great tip. Use headings, especially if the paper is going longer than a few pages or if it addresses specific parts of an assignment. And for example, some of the papers like the self-health assessment, it's really helpful to have those headers to help the grader identify that what parts of the assignment you're addressing. So there are different levels of headings, and you can look this up in the Perrin book. This is just lifted right out of there. Here is an example of a proper title, how it's arrange, then you can see the results is the major heading and move down from there. When you go to do your references, you want to make sure you do a separate page, and you can use the page break feature for that in Word. So you want to be sure and have it be a new page. So there are different rules depending on how many authors and who the authors are. So you want to organize the references. You want to have the word reference or references at the top in the center. And then you want to arrange your references in alphabetical order. And you should begin at the top of this page, and you should double space all entries and use a hanging indent. So these are the basic elements of a reference: the author's last name and initials, title of the work, and publication information. Some publications, especially online journals, have a digital object identifier, or DOI, which helps find that article, gives it a permanent identifier on the internet. So here's some features about that, and that's what it looks like. So scholarly journals are treated depending on their source. If it's an online scholarly journal, the reference looks like that with the DOI. Here's an example of a reference page. If there's no DOI, you can include the URL, and again, look in your text to parent text to see how to do that. This is an example of what article from an online periodical looks like. If the article also appears in print, then you don't have to put the URL. So that's another variation. So not only do you have to cite your references at the end of the page, but you also have anything that appears in your reference page needs to be cited in your text. So what that means is like say you're talking about COVID, and you look at the CDC website to get some data, but you're not quoting it directly. You paraphrase that information, and then you say at the end of the paragraph where that information came through by way of an in-text citation. So these are some different variations and some rules about that. Here are some other variations, and again, look in your parent text because it gives all these examples. So typically, so you treat an in-text citation differently if you are directly quoting from lifting a quote from the text, or if you're paraphrasing. So then you have a different format depending on the number of authors. And this is what it looks like if you have 3 authors. You include all of the authors at the first citation. And you want to be sure to be specific about where the quote comes from so somebody could find it if they needed to. And then subsequently, you can say John et al., which is and others. And if there's more than 5 authors, you don't have to list all of the authors for the initial reference. So this place here is more information about formatting the reference page. Don't use numbers. So this is some other tips, that you just use the initials, first and middle name initials, but don't spell out the name. Put the year in parentheses, or put ND in parentheses if there's no date, which is what ND stands for. So there's some variations on how, if you quite often when you're researching websites, there is no author, so you have to look and see how to approach that in Paren. So You want to be sure to use proper capitalization in the title. You capitalize the first letter of the first word and any word after colons, proper nouns, and the first word after a colon or dash. However, the title of the journal, you capitalize all of the words in the second title. You capitalize the first letter of each word in the journal title. So you use italics for titles of books, journals, and newspapers. And don't use italics or quotation marks for article titles. You don't need to include databases. You can read all that. So this is an example of one formatting for a non-author government organization. So here is another example of an in-text citation and a reference. This is where you pull the information from. So this is an example of a scholarly article and where all the stuff comes from. So here are the references for this. This is another example. Thank you for listening to this lecture.